Anyway, the next morning, I got up and she cooked breakfast and, and she said, do you have a driver's license? And I said, yes, ma'am, I've got a hardship driver's license. She said, I want to make you a deal. And I said, what kind of deal? She said, I tell you what, I've got a brand new Dodge out there and I can't drive. And I'd like somebody to drive me where I want to go.
Basically be a chauffeur.
I was a chauffeur. And said, can you do any plumbing? And I said, I don't know, I've never done any plumbing, but I expect I could. She said, well, how about putting a light bulb in or maybe putting a washer and a faucet? And I said, I can learn. She said, okay, here's what I'll do. You can have that room back there. You got to go to school. When school starts, you got to go to school. I'll clothe you and I'll feed you. You work for me on the weekends and you drive me where I want to go. I said, okay.
Did you ever go back to this woman?
Yeah, I did. But she died, and but she had a daughter named Crystal, and Crystal was 16. And I hate to say this, but this is where I learned about girls. I don't mean that I was having any affair with her or anything, but
Right.
we were really good friends.
And you liked her.
And I liked her. But anyway, she would let me come into her room at night, and but we never had an affair or nothing like that. I mean, it didn't happen. And she was a good girl. I mean, really good. And so anyway, when school started, I went to school. And I went down to Western Auto and I bought me a brand new Swin bicycle. White wall tires, lights, everything.
Beats the heck out of riding a horse to school, don't it?
Anyway, I finally got me a Brownwood Bulletin paper route. And then I got me a Fort Worth Star-Telegram paper route in the morning. I'd run the Brownwood Bulletin in the evening, Fort Worth Star-Telegram in the morning.
And then work for her on the weekends.
Work for her on the weekends, and then in the evening when I got out of school, I'd go to work at Miss Howard's Bakery after I run my paper route.
What'd you do at the bakery?
Oh, we done everything. We made bread and pies and just normal stuff they do in a bakery. I mixed the dough and,
Right.
and I cut the biscuits and all that stuff.
Right.
I done it all. And
Just working in the kitchen.
I worked right there. And, like bread, they come out with this little bread about this big around, and you take it and wrap it, and that's what makes you loaves. That's
Right.
what the crease is for.
Right. Right.
But anyway, I did that.
So basically you had about 4 jobs?
I had 3 jobs.
Three
Well,
jobs.
4 with her. But,
Right.
But anyway, I didn't let that interfere with driving her where she wanted to go. And her mother lived in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And school was out then that year, and I'd done real good in school. And I was in the 10th grade. And she wanted me to drive her to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I did. That was an experience, but anyway, her mother lived off out in the bushes, and that was quite an experience to get into the place. And
Out the boondock. Was there not many roads or what?
No, there was a sand trail back to it, about I'd say 2 miles back in there.
Sure.
And you couldn't pass nobody because it was one way.
Right.
I got there and I couldn't turn around. And her son, May's brother, which lived there with his mother, was, I told him, I said, May, I'm gonna have to back all the way out. I can't turn around. So her her brother left. And about 3 hours he come back and he said, you can turn around now. He done cut all them trees below the ground where I could turn around. With an axe. With an axe. Big guy. But he cut all them trees down where I could turn around. And one reason he did is because he wanted me to take him into Fayetteville. So he told his sister May, he said, May, I want to go into town. She said, okay. He said, we'll get Bob to drive you into town. Mm-hmm. And I did. And he said, pull up there in front of that grocery store. Mm-hmm. So I did. He went in and he come back out with a loaf of bread, and I don't know how much bologna, it was that thick. Mm-hmm. You know, sliced bologna. Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought he was going to take it home. Mm-hmm. Before we got home, that loaf of bread was gone and that bologna was gone. He done eat it.
The whole thing?
The whole loaf thing. And he said, I'm tired of Mama's biscuits. I want some light bread.
So that's the way he was going to go about it, huh?
That's all he went to town for. Anyway, man.
You scared me. I thought you were going to say he held up the grocery store or something.
No. He ate it. On the way home, he ate it. You know.
That's a heck of a club sandwich right there.
I guarantee you. But anyway, we got back home, and so I became 15.
Right.
You know. And one day I told May, I said, May, I'm going in the 3C camp.
What is 3C?
Civil Conservation Corps. That's what President Roosevelt had organized for guys to go join and build parks and roads and stuff like that.
So this is 41?
Actually, it was I went in 41.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she said, Bobby, you can't go. You're too young. And I said, well, I'm going to go see. So I went down to the recruiting office and I told that guy, I said, I want to join the CCC. And he said, looked at me and he said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 17. He said, you're 17? I said, yeah. He said, you sure you're 17? I said, yeah. He said, you'll have to get your parents to sign. I said, I don't have any parents. He said, what? And I said, my mother's in Pennsylvania and I don't really know where my dad is. He said, he looked at me again. He said, I don't believe you're 17. But he said, you look hungry and I'm going to sign you up.
Now, let me ask you this. You were living with Miss May, and you're basically working 4 different jobs and going to school. Do you think that work ethic just came from growing up at that time? Just because you know?
Well, actually, Russell, I was a natural mechanic. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't anything for me to work on a motor or something like that, even at that age. Mm-hmm. I was working on motors and everything else. Right. In fact, my brother and I overhauled that old 33 Chevrolet, and I wasn't, I think I was 12 at the time we overhauled it. And so, you know, I was a natural. Mm-hmm. It wasn't no problem for me. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, I was working 4 jobs and going to school, mm-hmm. and wasn't a problem because each one of them had a time that I could do, you know. Mm-hmm. The Brownwood Bulletin was the evening, mm-hmm. and after I run my Brownwood Bulletin, I'd go to work at Miss Howard's Bakery. And in the morning, I'd get up 4 o'clock in the morning, run my Fort Worth Star Telegram. Yeah. And then I'd go, during the day, I'd go to school. And then if she had something for me to do after I come in from school, you know, after I run my route, then I would do that for her, you know, whatever it was, she had apartments everywhere. Mm-hmm. I'd go put in a light bulb or put in a washer, and whatever it took, you know. I done a lot of stuff. Right. I learned a lot.
Right. On the fly.
Huh?
On the fly.
On the fly. Yeah, did. But then I went to 3 C's. I went to Colorado. I went to Macy Verde Park. And I stayed there for 6 months. And that's all they'd let you stay is 6 months. But then I re-upped, but I went to Estes Park then for a while. And then I went back to Cortez because they moved the park, our company back down below the Mesa into Cortez. And so I went there for another 3. I spent a year there at Mesa Verde and also at Estes Park. And I came home, when I was coming back to Brownwood anyway. And so I still had money. I still had money in my pocket.
Well, sure.
But anyway, I rented me a house. I was 16, and I rented me a house, and I bought me a car. May had a 34 Chevrolet Master, and 4-door sedan, and I bought that car. I give her $50 for it.
Was that the new car she was telling you about?
No, she had a 39 Dodge,
Oh, wow.
new.
Brand new.
So
Couldn't drive it.
anyway, I rented me a house, and I bought me a car, and I went up to the rock crusher, and there's a guy, the superintendent there named Bob Talbert, great big guy. I mean, huge. I think he weighed probably 350 or something. I don't know.
How tall was he?
He wasn't very tall, but he was huge. This way, you know.
Yeah.
And he chewed tobacco. Man, he's running out both sides. And I said, Mr. Talbert, I need a job. He said, how old are you? And I said, I told him I'm 16. And he said, I can't hire you. I said, look, I got to have a job. I'm fresh out of the 3 C's, and I need a job right now.
You were already done with school?
Well, I quit school. I was in the 10th grade. I quit.
Okay.
But I did go back and get my GED.
Right.
Later.
Right.
But anyway, he said, I can't hire you. I said, look, I got to have a job. And I said, I know y'all are just starting up again. They'd run the engines back when it belonged to Santa Fe back in the 20s. And so he said, I'll tell you what I could do for you. He said, I can't hire you. I can't put you on the payroll, but I can pay you by the piecework. He said, I'll pay you by the day, whatever you do.
Like under the table or what?
No, you can do piecework, but you can't. You can't be on payroll.
Okay.
You know, and you can do that now.
Just pay by the job.
Whatever you do.
Do this little project. Here's your money.
That's what you do. He said, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let you go up there, and I'm gonna let you help that guy in that engine room up there to get the boiler started and all that stuff.
Right.
And I said, good. So I went up there. Sorry, Russell.
Oh, it's okay.
Anyway, I went up there, and there stood my dad.
When was the last time you had seen him before then?
Not since I left the farm, not since he left the farm.
Right.
Anyway, he said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I come up here to help you get these boilers going. And he said, I don't think you want one job that I've got to do. And I said, well, what do you got to do? And he said, you got to crawl in them boilers and chip that slag off and rake it down here to the front where I can get it out. And it was hot weather.
Right.
He said, I'll put a fan in there for you. And he said, a light and all that. But he said, you're not going to be able to stay in there very long at a time. Anyway, make a long story short, I did it. I did that job.
What this story always generates a lot of emotion in you. What kind of emotion did you have at that time when you saw him?
Didn't bother me. Didn't bother me because I've been I've been on my own.
Were you mad?
No, no,
Were you bitter?
no, no. Russell, you got to understand. Times was hard,
Sure.
and Dad did what he had to do.
And you understood it.
He had to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
He had kids at home, and he had to feed them, and he had to go to work somewhere. And so, no, I wasn't bitter. I wasn't mad. You just did what you have to do,
Sure.
and I don't think you understand, Russell. I don't think you understand the times.
Yeah, I don't think there's no real way for us to understand that without have gone through it.
Back then, the best way I can explain it is, you did what you had to do to live.
It's survival mode.
Survival mode. That's what you had to do. Whatever it was. But anyway, I worked there in the crusher, doing different jobs. They'd give me a job. We had a steam shovel, and I'd pump water and oil in the steam shovel in the daytime. They'd pay me by the day. The one job. That's what they do until I become 17. And when I become 17, they put me on the payroll.
Now you can be on the
I go
payroll.
on the payroll. Then, when I went on the payroll, I had 17 years old. They put me in the shop up on the hill, building diesel engines. I was building, out of those Euclids, I was building diesel engines
Man.
at 17. But anyway, and then from there, well, in the meantime, though, while I was still working at the crusher, when I was 16, I met Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
It was still 16.
Was she out of school?
No.
was
She
still in
lived
school.
on a farm in Placid, Texas. And I met her on a blind date. And I kept going with her until we married in May of 1943.
Do you remember who set you up?
Her brother-in-law. I had a car and he didn't.
What was his name?
Elgin Tubbs.
Elgin Tubbs was responsible.
Elgin Tubbs was my brother-in-law.
I owe him big, don't I?
So anyway, I was going with Catherine, and we went together for a good while. And then they lived on this farm down there, and they were poor. They were very, very poor.
She had 14 brothers and sisters?
14 children in the family.
Oh, so 13 brothers and sisters.
Yeah, 13 brothers and sisters. But anyway, I asked her one day, I said, you want to get married? She had never been anywhere into town or nothing. She's going to school there at Placid.
Sure.
And and she said, I don't know. I said, I don't know. You'll have to talk to your dad.
Yeah, that's obvious.
John. And she said, I'm afraid that Dad's he's going to turn you down. And I said, well, would you marry me? And she said, yeah, I will. And so I came down one day and he was up at the store in Placid. They were buying staples like sugar and flour and stuff and
Sure.
and loading it in the wagon. That's all he has, wagon and horses. And so I was making pretty good money. I had money too.
Sure.
Anyway.
Would you say you still had some of that money left over from all those animals?
I did. And
Where did you have a bank account, or did you keep that with you?
no, I kept that with her while I was gone, Miss Sims. I left that money with her. She didn't know what it was, but I had a box, and I asked her to keep it for me while I was gone, the 3 C's, and she did. Anyway, I drove up in my car, and he was loading the stuff in that wagon, and of course they had to charge it. They didn't have no money. And so I went in and told the guy there that owned the store, I said, I'd like to pay that bill for him. He said, you what? And I said, I'd like to pay that bill for him. And he said,
Basically buying groceries for that family.
yeah, I did. Anyway, and I said, do they have a pretty good account here? And he said, yeah, they owe quite a bit of money. And I said, what are you talking about money? And he said, they owe $200. And I said, well, give me the tickets. I'll pay it. So I paid them out, cleared them out. And then when he went out to the wagon, I said, John, Catherine and I want to get married. He turned around, looked at me, and he said, when you gonna do it? Just like that. When you gonna do it? And I said, I'd like to marry her on May the 29th. And he said, okay.
So in essence, you kind of, it's kind of like a dowry.
Yeah. Anyway, on May the 29th, of course, she had no clothes. I mean,
One or two changes of clothes.
I would hate to tell you what she was wearing, but I give her, I think, $300. And I told her, I said, I want to take you to Brady, and I want you to buy clothes to get married in, and I want you to buy you some brassieres and panties and stuff. And I said, I want you to fix yourself up. Mm-hmm. And she said, I can buy a lot with $300. I said, yeah. 1943, man, that was a lot of money.
Guaranteed.
And so, anyway, she went to town, and her sister, her older sister, went with her, and they bought the wedding dress and all a bunch of stuff. Anyway, they got her fixed up. Bought me they bought a lot of stuff. Anyway, then time come for us to get married, and we went to this preacher's house, and her mother and dad was there, and she had 3 brothers and sisters there. And so when we got married, why, I didn't know what the preacher charged to marry anybody, so I handed him a $20 bill, and his face turned red, and he said, are you sure? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I've never been paid that much to marry anybody. Well, okay, good, happy lady, whatever I said to him, I don't even remember what I said to him. Anyway.
Glad to hear it.
Anyway, on the way home, Elgin Tubbs and his wife, Lorene, Catherine's sister, was with us. And we got to before we got to Brownwood, I never had a flat on that car until we crossed the Colorado River Bridge at Winchell, and I blowed out a right rear tire.
On your wedding day?
On my wedding day.
Come on, man.
I had my fancy clothes on. Anyway, I had to get out and change the tire. Anyway, make a long story short, we got into Brownwood.
You don't have to.
And I left Elgin and Lorene at their house, and we went on over to the house where I had my house. And we walked in, and Catherine said, you've got electric lights. And I said, yeah, I do. And she walked on back and went in the bathroom. She said, you got a pot? I said, yeah, I do. And I said, I've even got running water. She'd never had none of that.
Wow.
Never had none of that.
In 43?
In 1943, she had never even been to a picture show.
Wow.
So, anyway.
So no honeymoon, just we're married now, here we go.
There we go. And then I went to work the next day.
Well, yeah.
But, hey.
What are you going to do?
We were grown. I was grown.
Right.
I'm basically grown.
Right.
I was doing a man's job.
Right.
And I was basically grown. But anyway, we lived together 53 years.
Yeah.
And of course, things happen,
Right. And you know what, though? I don't even count all of that as... I don't consider that a normal situation because she wasn't herself.
No.
At the end.
No.
She had lost so much,
Yeah.
Of her memory and stuff. Well, I don't think anything of that.
Well, anyway. But anyway, that's kind of the story up until, of course, you know, back, I was drafted in 1944, 44.
44. Yeah, that would be. That sounds right.
44, and then I went in the service.
So you'd been married less than a year?
Yeah. So I went in the service, and I was in Fort Hood for 17 weeks training.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got shipped to, we wound up in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And I was over there with, actually assigned me to a tank destroyer battalion. And and then finally I went to the hospital with pneumonia and malaria. And then they done away with the tank destroyer battalion because tanks couldn't do any good over there, Russ.
No.
We were running in roads that just fall out from under you and all that stuff. You couldn't use them.
Right.
So they done away with it. And while I was in the hospital, they assigned me to 507 anti-aircraft, which I had no earthly idea where I was going. So I wound up in Clark Field, which is north of Manila. That's a big air base, one that the military were using for their air base. And still in the 507 anti-aircraft. And they put me to servicing L5 airplanes. That every day they'd come in and we'd have to put props on them or boats or whatever, you know, service them up, you know, and so get them ready. And what those L5s were doing was picking up wounded.
Mm.
Well, they had, you know, the side of it would let down. They'd put one litter in, and then they had to carry the nurse with them, and the nurse faced the patient, you know. She sat right behind the pilot facing the patient. Mm-hmm. But anyway, one day, just out of the blue, of course, I'd flown down Fort Hood. I took flying lessons at Fort Hood when I went in the service down there. Mm-hmm. And so one day, just out of the blue, the sergeant come out and said, Brashear, you're next. And I said, what do you mean I'm next? And he said, you're going to Baguio tomorrow. I said, Baguio? I don't know where Baguio is. He said, you follow so-and-so, I forget what his name was, but anyway, I don't remember names. Yeah. I only remember two guys I was in training with in Fort Hood. I just was immaterial.
Right, it didn't even matter.
It didn't matter. Anyway, I said, I haven't even been checked out in one of these things. He said, you will in a little bit. So we got in it. I went around the field 3 times, made 3 landings. He said, you're going to Baguio tomorrow. And we got a guy who needs to pick you up. And said, you're going to take him to Manila. You don't have no navigation in them things. No radios, no navigation.
No radio, no navigation.
No. I don't know where I'm going. He said, you're going to follow, I don't remember the guy's name.
The dude, this guy.
You're going to follow him. He knows where he's going. Anyway, we take off, and I follow him. We get to Baguio, and there ain't no runway. And we land on the side of the hill like that. I mean.
So your first landing as an army
student.
As an army pilot is on the side of a hill?
Landed on the side of a hill. In fact, I was coming in, and I told that little gal that's with me, I said, man, I never have done this before. I said, I don't know. And she said, oh, Brashear, just pull the stick back, cut the power, and it'll do itself.
So you're, what, 18 years old, is that right?
I'm 18.
18 years old.
I'm 18.
Flying a plane in the military.
Anyway.
Land on the side of a hill.
Anyway.
It's crazy.
We landed, and we sat there all for 6 hours. I guess 6 hours. They bringing that guy out of the mountains, you know.
Yeah.
They had him on a north of Baguio. I mean, way up. Baguio was 10,000 feet.
Woo.
And he was up beyond that.
Dang.
And they were still Japs up there. Still fighting. They didn't know the war was over. Anyway, well, it really wasn't over.
Well, I was going to say, it wasn't over in 44.
No, well, this was 45.
Oh, it was already 45?
45.
Well, we're getting close to it being over.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, they were still fighting, I guess, because they were getting wounded. But anyway, they finally got him down, and this guy that I'd followed up there, he said, "Now, I'm got one too. I'm gonna take to Manila." And I didn't know it at the time, and I still, it's a kind of a mystery to me because Sybil's dad was on the Repo hospital ship.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where we put him.
Come on. And you had no idea?
I had no idea.
Come on, man.
I didn't even know he was there, you know.
So you're halfway around the world and you run into your father-in-law.
I had met the man, you know. Of course, Sybil was still just a young girl, you know.
Right.
But anyway.
Was she already pregnant with Uncle Bob?
No. Yeah, when I left, she was. Yeah. In fact, he was about 8 months old when I got back. But anyway, he says, I got one too, and I'm going to Manila. He said, "You follow me." Well, we start to Manila, and we're at 10,000 feet. Manila's sea level.
Golly.
And we're coming down, see? And all at once I noticed smoke coming from my prop. And I thought, oh no, we ain't gonna make it. This prop is smoking. And I knew I'd put props on these things, you know, before when they'd come in and all that. But I didn't realize really what happened, you know. But what happened was we set up at Baguio in that moist air for 6 hours. These are wood props.
Oh my gosh.
And we start down and it dries out and then it starts getting loose.
Right.
And it starts smoking. She said, "Brashear, just cut power back. Don't worry about it. We're going to make it." I said, "You done this before?" And she said, "Nearly every time." I says, "I guess that's the reason I put props and bolts and everything on these things when they were on the line." And she said, "Yeah, every day." So anyway, we made it. We made it to Manila.
Wooden propellers, wow.
That's all we had back then. But those were big engines. Man, I could take off and hear that fence out there.
Damn.
I mean, that sucker come out of there, man. I mean, it'd go. But anyway, we got to Manila. And we still had to go back to Clark, and this guy that's with me, or leading me wherever I wanted to go, he said, "I'll tell you what we'll do." He said, "We'll go here at this base. It's a little airport, Nickel Field they call it. That's what the Japs used. They landed right in the middle of Manila. They had a little field there called Nickel Field." He said, "We got a base there now," and said, "We'll go over and get some boats. And we'll put some new bolts in this thing." Anyway, we did. And we made it back to Clark Field. And I flew there for, several months. And then I went, then they pulled me out and I went to a place called San Marcelinas. It's inland a little way, but I guess about 100 miles from Manila. And I was still in 507. And
you're still not even in a flight squadron.
No. That's the kind of thing you did, and I never got paid because my records were, I don't know where they went.
So it's, even though you're in the military, it's still survival mode.
Yeah. Oh, and back then, over there, you didn't worry about getting paid or nothing. I mean, you didn't.
Just trying to survive.
But anyway, then they told me one day, said, "You're going down to Manila and you're going to stay in the Roosevelt Hotel because it's time that you had some rest time."
Mm-hmm.
And that was MacArthur's hotel. It never got hit. By the way, the Southern San Miguel Brewery, Nora, the rope factory, nor the Roosevelt Hotel didn't get hit. No, that was MacArthur's. Anyway, I went down to Manila at the Roosevelt Hotel and they said, "You're going to be there 2 weeks." And when our 2 weeks was up, I had started back to San Marcelinas. And I got on about, not even halfway, there's another weapons carrier coming meeting us. And they stopped us. And they said, Bashir, you're going home. So I said, where's my stuff? They said, we brought it with us. Here it is, all your stuff. So I went down there and I stayed again at the Roosevelt Hotel for another 3 days, and then I caught a Marine Cardinal ship, which is huge. I mean huge. I had my own room.
Wow.
In that ship.
Almost like a cruise ship.
Oh yeah, it was as big as the Queen Mary.
Wow.
Big Marine ship. Russell, we could eat any time of the day we wanted, anything we wanted. We could do anything we wanted to do on that ship.
Coming from your background, I bet you were eating everything in sight.
Man, we never had anything to eat but dried eggs and stuff, you know,
Right,
over
right.
there. No milk or nothing.
Right.
Well, the first thing I wanted was some eggs and milk,
Well, yeah.
you know.
Real eggs.
You really? Anyway, I came back, and Catherine and my dad and my mother met me in Abilene. I'd caught the bus on down from California.
Had your dad reconnected with your
Yeah,
mom?
oh yeah, they'd got back together. Yeah, they got back together. And then when I got back, well, actually, there's another story that I didn't tell before. See, Dad and Mother got back before I ever left to go overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So I had Edwin and my brother and I, one that's just older than me,
Mm-hmm.
we got together and said, we found a house there on Gill Street there in Brownwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Edwin, you have any money? And he said, yeah, I got a little bit. And I said, why don't we make a down payment on that house and let Mom and Dad move in it? That's a good idea.
I remember going to Brownwood when I was a little kid and visiting Grandma Great. Is that the house?
That's the house.
I played cars out in that yard.
Yeah, my brother and I paid down on that house for them, and Mother rented out rooms and paid for that house.
Yeah.
And so that's it.
That's a two-story house, wasn't
No, it wasn't two-story.
it? It wasn't?
415 Gill Street.
Huh.
Anyway, that was another story. But anyway,
Well, that's okay.
I got back home, and I got back to Brownwood anyway, and Catherine and I had rented a room for Mom and Dad
Mm-hmm.
for just a short time, and then I went to San Angelo and went to work for a Concho Motor Truck Company, which was a GMC dealership
Okay.
as a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a guy by the name of Walter. Can't remember his last name now, but anyway, his name was Walter. And he was the pusher, tool pusher for Lane Brothers Trucking Company, which all what they did is they moved oil rigs. And he came down there one day and he saw me and he said, would you like to come to work for us? And I said, can't remember his last name. Anyway,
Whatever.
I called him by his name and I said, look, I'm doing pretty good here. I'm making pretty good money here. He said, what are you making? And I said, well, I'm clearing about $150 a week. And he said, how about me giving you about 30% more? I said, when do you want me to go to work? I said, I'll have to give Mr. Neely here a 2-week notice because I wouldn't leave without giving him notice.
Yeah, you don't. That's disrespectful.
But anyway, I went to see Mr. Neely, and Mr. Neely said, well, Bob, he said, I hate to lose you, but he said, you don't have to work 2 weeks if you want to go on out there and go to work. He said, I'm proud for you. And I said, thank you very much. But he said, if you get notion you want to come back, you come back here.
Right.
But you got a job.
Right.
So I was the only man that actually could work on the 426 GMC trucks, but nobody knew anything about the engines but me. I was the only one. Out of 4 mechanics, I was the only one.
Huh.
And so...
That didn't surprise me.
Anyway, I went to work for Lane Brothers Trucking Company, moving rigs. Actually, they furnished me a brand new pickup, and I was to follow these trucks around and repair them when they needed it, and I did. And I did that for probably a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And then Pool Well Service, Frank Poole, that had Pool Well Service, came over one day and he saw me working there, and he said, Bob, he said, would you like to come run a swabbing unit for me? And I said, Mr. Poole, I don't know anything about a swabbing unit. And I said, I don't know. I said, I guess I could learn, but I don't know anything about a swabbing unit. And he said,
What is that?
well, actually, a swabbing unit is when they're drilling a well, and they get through drilling this well. What you do then, you go out there. This is a unit that's got a cable and what they call sinker bars. These sinker bars are 10 foot long, and they're heavy, and they go down in the well. Like Schlumberger. Schlumberger was a company that perforated. They put a gun on the end of my sinker bar, and I laid it down in the well, and then they perforate that pipe. They blow holes in it down underneath and in the bottom of the well. Then Halliburton comes out, and they do what they call a sand frac. First of all, they take oil. It's a really thin oil, and they push that oil down in the formation underneath. Then they leave. And then I come in with a swab that fits the pipe. And I drop down in that oil and I start pulling that oil, the top of that oil off. See? And then if it's a good well, it depends on the surface and all. And I was swabbing, I went to work for him and I swabbed Wildcat wells. We didn't know what they was going to do. And the first well that I swabbed was out in Sprayberry Field, out close south of Odessa. And when I started that pull on the third pull, I fell to the ground. Give it that.
Did it scare the mess out of you?
I put that Waukesha in high gear, and I come out of that sucker. And we cut that. When I got out, we cut that Christmas tree off. She was rocking on 2,500 pounds. That was a good one.
Man.
And I'm telling you. But you don't never know what's going to happen.
Well,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, you're swabbing in places you don't know what's there, you know. So I worked for Frank Poole. Well, let me tell you
Go back to the
story. He come over and he said, you want to go to work for me? And then I told him the story, and I said, I don't know how to run a swabbing unit. And anyway, he said, what are you drawing here? And I told him, and he said, I'll double your pay.
You're like, I think I can swab.
So I went in and talked to Walter, and Walter said, well, Bob, he said, I'm not going to tell you, you got to give me 2 weeks or anything. He said, you know our system. If you want to go work for Frank, that's fine. And they were good friends, And so anyway, I went on to work for Frank, but Walter told me, he said, if you're not happy with Frank, you come back over here.
Right.
You go to work here. Okay. So anyway, I went to swab another well. I swabbed several wells, but I mean, this particular well, they had drilled a crooked well. They had went over into somebody else's property. That's what they do.
Oh.
Back then. If they couldn't get that lease, they'd go down and go over to that property.
Wow, that's sneaky.
Oh yeah. So anyway, I had run a cable because that was crooked, and I was only using one sinker bar because that's the only thing that'd go down, And I called Frank and I told him, I said, run a cable out here. And boy, I mean, he raised Cain. What are you doing running a cable? And I said, look, Frank, this is a crooked hole. There ain't nothing I can do about it. Either you want to swab it or you're not going to swab it. Whatever you want to do. And I said, I can't help it. And anyway, he come out there and brought another cable. These are 11,000 feet long. 11,000 feet. In fact, they're over 11,000 feet because we were swabbing 11,000 feet. he brought me another cable, put it on. I told him, I said, Frank, we're going to run this one too. And he said, go ahead and run it. He said, they're paying for it. So he said, I'll send you
Can you
some.
let her in?
That's civil. He said, I'll send you some relief out. I waited 5 days for relief. No food, no relief, no nothing. I was eating off the Roughnecks. So one morning I said,
Honey,
yeah,
you've got a good friend at the front door.
have I?
Yes, you do.